recording is live. I have to share the link in the chat with everybody. Oh, looks like I missed some chats in the channel there. All right, I will definitely be checking those after this. And then let me just make sure we tag. Oh, that's the wrong. I tagged some random member. My bad, dude. For what it's worth, that's kind of your fault. So, all right, let me get my screen share started just to have it up because I'm going to be drawing a bunch of stuff. Are you guys able to hear me okay? If you can, please just put a 1 in the chat so I know I'm not talking to myself. Okay, thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. All right, so just kind of ignore this right now. It's just a carryover from this morning's live stream. Today I want to talk to the Rags to Riches members, the new blood. And I'm just going to kind of give everyone a moment to roll in, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. Hello. So how's everyone's week? How'd everybody feel about the week? Plus or minus, both in the market and out of the market. How's everyone's life? I like to check in with you guys once in a while. Porter says hyphen. I like it. Oh, minus. Oh. Well, I was trying to put a positive spin on it, but Charlie says it's cool that I was right about the TSLL 1650 put. Yes, you were. Uncool that I wasn't still around to get in. That's okay though. You know, you demonstrated to yourself that you can identify a high potential setup, and you know, it's future circumstances you'll be able to participate. So good stuff. Yeah, and you probably had some confidence in what you saw, and it happened to work out. That's awesome. That's the name of the game. We identify high potential. We take low risk opportunities to seek those. And then would we get rewarded? Great. If not, we just manage our risk and accept what we get in both directions. That's the nature of the market and life itself. We always take risks, and then we have to manage those risks to the best of our ability. But circumstance is always going to be a factor, and you can't control that. Snowflake says mixed bag, lots of good and a little bad. Oh, you being naughty? What? What happened, Snowflake? Oh, are you talking about outside the market? Did you go back to Snowflake prison? Oh, outside. Well, I'm sorry, man. That sucks. Hopefully, onwards and upwards, maybe? Question mark? We joke, but we do want Snowflake to have a good quality of life. Just life. I hear you, man. I got my own little set of circumstances going on over here. But, you know, again, we can only control what we can control. So you got to do what you can with what you can. Yeah, you too, man. Vinny says, managed risk very well this week, but exited 2 trades way too early. What do you mean by too early? What told you to get out, and what told you that staying in would have been ideal other than the end result? Because it sounds to me like you probably got out right on time, and then the price just went a little bit further. If there's one thing I know about traders, it's they don't get out of trades for no reason. There's always a reason. So a reversal with TDIC at 319, but then stepped away from my computer. Okay, so you had a focus obstacle. You weren't able to be present, and it's a high risk setup. I feel like that's good risk management. Didn't have any cash put back in around 9. That's okay. It sounds like you were in front of a high potential setup just like Charlie, and you got your piece and walked away, right? I can promise you there will be so many more opportunities in the market. It's very easy to get, you know, to feel like we missed out or feel like we could have done better. But at the end of the day, that's just your brain. It's designed to do that because it wants to optimize any reward that's variable, and that is its own form of stress. You felt like you should have held on to your 200 shares with a wider stop loss. Okay. Would you feel the same if you did widen your stop loss and it stopped out and then went down and didn't go up? Like if circumstance went the other way on that, would you feel good about moving the stop loss, or would you feel better about having a smaller loss? Snowflake's scheduled to close on my refinancing next week and saving about $700 a month moving forward. That's awesome, man. Refis are always stressful, but it's good. Give me 1 second, guys. I gotta just check something real quick. I hear my dog going nuts. I want to make sure there's nobody outside trying to bust into the house. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I'm back. Neighbor across the street had a little issue with something. Oh, okay, let me catch up on the chat here. Sorry, I just ran down 3 floors and then back up. Yeah, exactly what Charlie said. You know what it looks like when it's about to do the move that you saw, and then you can make sure you execute. Robinhood was not optimal anymore. I don't blame you. I hate Robinhood with a passion. It's such a terrible platform. It's good for new traders that don't know better, and don't really need information or efficient fills. Like it's good for slower time frame traders that want to keep things simple, which is good, but predominantly just on the option side, which doesn't really jive well with new traders and risk management. So, it is what it is. You just gotta take it with a grain of salt. Now, I personally prefer Webull just because it's good for demonstration, and more importantly because it's so modular. I can move stuff around. I can customize it. Like for example, when I'm looking at day trades, I can make sure that I put the chart here, the time and sales here, and the order book here, so I can look right here. My eyes don't have to leave this area when I'm looking at stuff, right? But that's for day trades, and not everyone's into that, and that's okay. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to start with, getting the ball rolling today. Let me just draw some stuff out so you guys can see. Obviously, I kind of took a little bit of a spanking here on some SPY contracts, and that's okay. So right now I've got about $50-ish worth to speculate with, and that's fine, right? I get it back on taxes, and I can very easily make that back. So not too worried about that. But it is good proof of concept that having that 70% locked up in investments, protects you from that stuff. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sell these and go, trade SPX or anything like that, but I could very easily see new traders doing that. And that's where things get really dangerous. So to avoid all that, we just lock it up ahead of time, and then we keep the 30% separate. And sometimes that might, you might want it in a separate account. And sometimes you might just be comfortable having it in a separate area. Now, right here, you see it says open $10.83 negative. That's just because these are pulling down, and a lot of that is today. Like these have been pretty greenish lately, and that's okay. I don't really care about the share price on these. Like Tesla, for example, and IWMY, those are meant to lose money. They're designed to lose money on the share side because I want to convert that adjustment value over into a cash payment that I can reinvest. So I'm taking, So I'm taking cash, converting it into these shares, and then converting smaller pieces of those shares back into cash, and then I convert that cash into other more quality shares. I'm not reinvesting them into IWMY or TSLY. I'm reinvesting those profits over into Main, Pfizer, ET, Schwab, and O. So that's the idea there. Because these are going to continue to move up and provide better income and just be better overall over a longer period of time. So I'd rather just build those up, and I don't mind harvesting little pieces of these values here because I want to sell these for a loss anyway, IWMY and TSLY, just to offset the income. So not a terrible situation to have, and that's also why I'm not putting too much into them. Right now they're all equal. I have about $100 in each one. But over time, you'll see that there will be a disparity here between these and the rest of the positions. But right now, I just have my little starter Pokemon. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, so what do we look at when it comes to dividends? I kind of want to dig into this part first because I know that the Rags to Riches members are very eager to get started. So I want to provide you guys all with a spreadsheet. I just have to finish making a few adjustments to it, and then I want you guys to make copies, or if you guys want, you can have your own tabs. And then I want to just make sure that I know where you're all at so that we can kind of build each skill up as we go. So right now, we've talked about having a couple systems in place that protect us. Like the first one is financial stability outside the market. So that includes budgeting, credit building, and then making sure that we're able to make consistent contributions, which is this next box, okay? Once we do that, we've got some value growth, no matter what, into this portfolio. So we've got financial stability, then we've got credit, building, and maintenance. Can't draw my M. Consistent contributions, right? Because that was part of the financial stability. And then we've got the portfolio, okay? So before we get into the speculative stuff, right, that's more for the live streams and for later on, we got to talk about the investment stuff, which in this case, I'm using dividend income ETFs or dividend growth ETFs. So in this case, we're just going to call them divvies, okay? And then those, of course, get reinvested to buy more dividend stuff, and then the losses go for taxes. Is everybody on the same page about that process so far? Completely separate from speculation. Everybody understands the basics of buying dividend stocks and then having to reinvest the profits, as well as using some losses to offset the capital gains tax. Okay, good stuff. So let's dive into what we look for within the dividend stuff, because that's just as important. And before we even get into that, I want to talk about the roles of the dividend allocations here. So I'm just gonna erase the speculative stuff for now, and I'm just gonna make this box a little bit bigger so that we can talk about ratios, which again, I'm just very briefly recapping what we've already talked about. So here we've got the yield max or high yield. I'll do high yield. Trash ETFs. You can make whatever acronyms you want, but this is solely for taxes. Okay, and we want this to be a relatively small amount because we're not buying these for the yield. It's not just to get a whole bunch of money. That's a passive benefit, but we're primarily buying these just for taxes because I want to be able to sell something for a loss. Now, in the case of Tesla, things do move up once in a while. If Tesla's rallying, then Tesla will move up. That's okay. It just means I get a little more dividend income, but ultimately I want to sell those for a loss by the end of the year so I can reduce that capital gains burden, okay? And the specifically, there's different ways that this income all counts. Like you've got K1 filers, then you've got the ordinary versus qualified dividends, then you got payment distributions, which are slightly different than dividend payments. So there's a little bit of nuance when it comes to taxes. That's why I always recommend a locally licensed tax professional. As we continue to learn, I'll walk you guys through all that stuff, but I can't give you guys tax advice. I can only give you education. So then within there, we want a larger portion to be, income, and these are going to be the more frequent pairs that are able to outperform or outweigh those adjustments. And that's going to be things like O, and it's going to be things like main, kind of your monthly pairs. And then beyond that, I want the quarterly payers. These are the growth ones. And that's not a golden rule or anything. I'm just saying that's generally how it tends to work, is that the quarterly payers tend to be more for growth. I would also slap Schwab in here, even though it's a quarterly payer, I believe. And that's why I'm saying it's not a hard and fast rule. But the idea here is that we want a very small portion of the portfolio, the dividend portion, a small portion of the largest portion, to be for taxes. It's designed to be an attrition game that we can use to offset our income from these two other boxes. And then slightly less than the growth portion, which is the largest. That's the end result for most of the dollars that we put into this. They should all land here so this can compound over time in greater quantity. In the middle there, you've got this smaller area, which is more for income. And this is more for just speeding things up to go into there. Does that make sense? So these still grow. They still pay very good short term, but the goal isn't just to buy and hold these for income. That's just putting your foot on the gas pedal a little bit. Ultimately, this is a means to an end to get into the bigger growth stocks, because once you get up there, this whole process turns into, this dividend engine builds and sustains itself, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that's still a lot of tax money, and you're not going to want to buy and sell, 6 figures worth of something to offset taxes, right? So at the end of the year, the end of the road here, once we get this engine up and running and it's taking over and compounding itself much more rapidly than our contributions are impacting, then it's an asset portfolio at that point in terms of what you can do with it. And at that point, then you go for things like SB locks, which is a securities-backed line of credit, and things like that. And at that point, what's in here doesn't really matter as much. You really want most of it to be in the growth side, because that's what they're going to want to see, the lender. They want to see stability and growth. They're not going to want to see a bunch of high-yield stuff if it's 90% of your portfolio. They're going to be like, great, congrats, but we're not going to loan you crap right now. You're too high risk. So they really want to see stable growth and a lot of diverse ETFs and all that good stuff. So at that point, you're less focused on making contributions into the cash flow portion of it, and you're really just in maintenance mode. And that might yield something like maybe 5 to 8% per year, or maybe 10 to 15% per year, instead of an aggressive 28 to 30% per year. Whereas a newer, smaller account might yield 25 to 30, maybe a little bit higher, depending on how you reinvest in your contributions and your ratios. So that's the idea. Does everyone understand that? And again, this has nothing to do with speculation. It's just buying specific and deliberate ratios with a strategy, and then using the money flow from money, share money, to reinvest strategically so that you can grow these deltas between these three tiers. And then the ultimate goal is to accumulate a massive amount of assets so that you can go to a specialized lender and then get out of paying as much in taxes, because you're less interested in income at that point, and you're solely focused on growth and hedging in that larger portfolio, because that's what the lender is going to want to see. And at that point, you're then taking your 35% tax rate that you'd normally pay on taxes and converting that down into a much smaller amount. You still have to pay some, because you're still going to have some in dividend income. But most of your livable money is going to come from that SB lock. And that might be, let's say, a 3 to 5% tax rate. Okay? That's what wealthy people do. That's the long-term plan. Then you can also take out LIUs and other forms of insurance where your death literally just covers the payout. And then obviously you have to be very careful how you set that up. But that's the idea. Is then you don't even have to worry about that interest rate, because it pays for itself. And you can also just slap most of that into a high yield savings account and cover that pretty easily, sometimes even with the same lender. So, but that's the idea. This is the big picture view of what we're trying to set up. So right now, financial security into contributions that are consistent and uninterrupted, because we don't want to have to pull money out of the portfolio. So we have to make sure that the money we commit is usable and can stay in there for a while. That alone should grow a portfolio just like a savings account. Then with that, we're going to buy this ratio of these, which I've done so far. And then we're just going to start reinvesting that dividend income up the chain every single time. Okay? So I'm going to take the Tesley and IWMY income, put that into O, Main, and Schwab. And then I'm going to take all their income and put it into Pfizer at the end of the day, or Johnson & Johnson, or wherever I decide to land on what I buy there. And then once the portfolio hits a significant threshold, you're talking 7-8 figures, then you can bring it over to a specialized lender and all that good stuff. So that might take a very long time, but we have to start building that engine today, because 10 years from now, we don't want to say, oh, now let's start. So let's focus on that today. So before, I'm not going to do actually, yeah, you know what? We're going to do the financial stability stuff today, just because it's a Friday and it's change of season, and I kind of want everybody here to understand the importance of that. So first off, does everybody understand that part of it so far? And if you guys are on the Rags to Riches team, I'm going to start working with you guys individually in the chats, and you guys are free to obviously share your progress as well. I will not ask you guys to share your budgets. I will only ask your confidence levels, and I will ask you if certain boxes are checked when it comes to your financial stability, and then we can optimize whatever's not checked. Does that sound fair? When it comes to the portfolio, yes, I do want you guys to share that, because I do want everyone else to be able to see that and learn from it, but I don't want to have your personal finances on a live stream. That doesn't help anybody. Okay, so personal finance 101, it's pretty straightforward. You've got inflow and you've got outflow, just like a company, okay? So inflow, you've got, that's just you getting money, right? Anything that goes into a bank account or multiple bank accounts, that's inflow. Outflow is obviously the opposite. That's your expenses, it's your discretionary spending, it's all kinds of, I say flex because I was thinking of expenses. All right, so inflow can be salary. That's probably the number one for most people. I don't know why I was trying to type Salisbury there. I'm unmedicated. That could be child support if you're collecting that. If you're paying that, it goes on the outflow side. Doesn't matter what the what the court might consider income to be, because that like taxes and court stuff, they tend to not count child support in some other forms of payment, but in terms of your real dollar flow from day to day, it's going to matter because it is still affecting your portfolio balance. We got salary, we got child support, we got windfalls, right? Anytime you get just a surplus of cash out of nowhere, that counts. It's inflow, and let's say we get disability. If you're on disability, that's another form. There's all kinds of money that we can attribute to income, right? And then, of course, there's profits from the stock market if you're making those. And I'm talking strictly about like bank accounts and things like that right now. I'm not talking so much about your inflow for your portfolio. I mean this more if you made profits and then you trimmed the portfolio and you pulled some out for taxes or something like that. Not so much the stuff that's in your portfolio. This is just real cash, okay? Let's see what else we got. We got obviously like lottery. If you play any of that stuff, you can attribute that. That goes in both columns. Let's see. We've got interest, bank interest, which depending on your bank size, that may or may not be significant. Interest. We got royalties, things like that. Like you guys get the idea. It's anything that you're making that is yours to spend. Now, it doesn't mean it can't be earmarked for other things, but it is inflow that goes into your bank account. So a quick show of hands here. How many people have more than one bank account? Put a 1 in the chat if you do, 2 if you don't, and that's all I'm going to ask about bank stuff. I don't want anyone here to feel like they have to share stuff. I have many bank accounts. I'm going to say 1, personally. If you have a business, I'm assuming you have more than one account because you probably don't want to go down for embezzlement or anything. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So we get a couple, and then we got Snowflake. There were 3. All right. So outflow. Again, some of these can just transfer over, right? Child support, that's an easy one. Bills, like you got your mortgage or rent. That's obviously a big one. I can't write for crap today. I don't know why. That almost looks a little bit Arabic. Then you got your utilities, like just basic budgeting stuff. I'm just going to kind of go through these really quick. You got your home, you got your insurance, right? That counts for both health and home and auto. There we go. Then you got your car payment itself. Car payment. Maybe I should turn this into like a Family Feud thing. Then you got food. Food, internet. And you guys, if you want to share some in the chat too, you can just blurt these out. I'm just kind of writing these really, really quickly. Let's see here. We got utilities, we got internet, we got survey says. We'll see who doesn't have bills. And then there's kind of the phone, obviously. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of them. Obviously, everybody knows what bills are. Now, in this case, we can take the outflow and we can separate that into two categories. Okay, recurring subscriptions, for example, your Pennybois sub. Then there's two categories here that we can put these into. The first one and the most important one, the one that I care about, is going to be recurring, or however you spell it. I just gave up halfway through that word. All right. So things like mortgages, they're recurring because you pay them every month. Utilities are recurring. You pay them every month. Insurance is recurring. Car payment is recurring. Food is recurring. Internet's recurring. Phone recurring. So I kind of listed out all recurring expenses here, but there are also things that are not recurring, which can be like, let's say you have let's say you make a donation, right? That's an expense. You're still paying it out. It's outflow, but it's maybe a one-time thing, or maybe you help a relative or something, or maybe you have to pay for a repair, just a one-off repair. Those are non-recurring, which means that you kind of need to account for them, but they're not something you can really forecast, right? So you don't really have a lot of control over that other than shopping around in the moment as a reactive process, okay? Ideally, you have like a little nest egg built up for emergency stuff like that. That's part of the process. But if you just get hit with circumstance, you can't control that. So if you don't, that's okay. You just got to work with what you got. But what we can control is these recurring expenses as much as possible. So does everyone understand this so far? I'm just going to grab a new screenshot. Actually, I should probably start putting these in the chat channels. My bad. I keep like just erasing all this stuff. And then I kind of feel bad because people ask me questions in DMs. I just don't have the graphic. So let's look at recurring. And then we'll talk about some ways that we can kind of reduce those. Show of hands here. Who likes paying more than they have to for anything in life? If you do, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't, put a 2 in the chat. I am expecting to see a whole bunch of 2s. I personally don't. I don't like paying more taxes because I'm not getting more representation. I don't like paying more for my phone bill because I'm not getting more phone or more service. I don't like paying more for my car because I'm not getting more car. It just doesn't make sense for me to contribute money generously to these large corporations or larger organizations because they don't need it, right? I'd rather give it to a mom and pop store, a local economy, if it's going to go to that, or someone in my immediate circle, or something that I can use to improve myself. I don't like paying national chains a bunch of money for no reason. They don't care about me, so why would I go out of my way to help them? 999, okay. 420, nice. So there's a couple ways that we can impact the amount that we pay unnecessarily, because this is what we're looking for, right? This is where we can make our gap, because if all your inflow is spoken for, right? And when you don't have options, when you don't have money saved up, and even when you do, to an extent, your money just belongs to whoever asks for it first. And a lot of times that's based on a calendar, and that means you have no flexibility, right? Which means you may have to go negative sometimes. You may have to take those insufficient funds fees, and that's not fun for anyone, and it just sets you further and further back. You might have to use a higher interest credit card because that's all you can get approved for. Given your current circumstances, that puts you in a spiral, and then the interest rates destroy your money flow. So the goal here is to free up as much possible money as we can month to month without impacting our quality of life. We definitely want to improve our quality of life, but I don't want anyone here to eat ramen. We just have to identify areas where we don't need to pay more and then just simply start paying less with an agreement. So there's a couple different ways we can impact these, and it's kind of depend on what you're looking at, right? Because the goal here is to separate or drive a wedge between your inflow and your outflow, because the gap between is wealth. That's where you can grow stuff. You have options. You have flexibility. So when it comes to recurring expenses, there are typically about 4 or 5 different ways that we can leverage those, right? The first one is going to be loyalty programs. And these aren't in any particular order. Loyalty programs, that's not an R. That is an R. All right, loyalty programs. And then you get like customer retention offers, or promos, I guess we should call that. And that's, if you have like a phone company, for example, like Verizon, you can call them and say, hey, I really like being with you guys. I've been with you guys for 5 or 10 years. I don't want to change plans, but I have to shop around the economy, blah, 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 right? Relate to them as a person. And then you can say, do you have a retention promo or a loyalty program that you can put me on, even if it's short term, just so I can get a little bit more flexibility in my budget, right? And they're people. They're either going to have it or they won't, but they usually aren't jerks about it. They're certainly not just going to cancel your account unless you're hostile. So these two are really easy ways to negotiate down service-based subscriptions that are recurring. And then my favorite here is just shopping around. Look for alternatives. New competitors are emerging all the time, and they're constantly trying to poach everyone else's customers. So if you can save money by switching from, let's say, Geico to Allstate or whatever, and still get the same coverage, it makes sense to do that, as long as it's not too disruptive. If it's going to be too much paperwork, then that's, personal preference. But you're getting paid to do that paperwork in the form of widening the gap between your inflow and your outflow. So technically, you're paying more money to be convenient and to do less paperwork. So I'd rather just do the paperwork and get that money freed up. So those are 3 ways. Who can think of some other ways that we can reduce these expenses that are recurring? I'll put one right here. We can refinance, right? Who here has ever thought to refinance an auto loan? Just a quick show of hands. A 1 in the chat if yes, 2 if no. I know a lot of you guys have kind of been in these streams a lot, but that's something that I just want to highlight here, is that most people don't even think about that. We all understand that we can refinance a mortgage and we can take out a second mortgage, and that's something that's kind of drilled into people's heads with the economy, but very few people know that you can even refinance an auto loan. And all loans are an agreement. You have a term, you have an amount, and you have interest, right? And then, of course, the parties involved. So if you can extend out a loan, okay, that's going to do a couple of things. A, you're going to pay more long term, depending on how you do it, but you're going to free up money flow short term, so that's the trade-off. Which in theory you should be able to use that money more efficiently and then pay off the loan later at a more efficient route. But either way, you're reducing your money flow or your monthly expense and increasing your money flow. But more importantly, this pushes out the average age of credit because you have a larger loan. There are different loan types, of course, that is reporting to your credit score, and that can help you. It depends on obviously how they do it. You don't want it triggered as a new loan, because then obviously that works against you. But it's worth exploring at least because it's a more multifactorial potential benefit here that most people just aren't aware of or don't think about, because they don't view auto loans as financial things. They just say, oh, it's something I got to pay to have a car. So it's not just about refinancing home loans. There's definitely advantages and potential risks for doing this. That's why it's important to do the research. But it is a great way, if you can do it successfully, to bring that monthly expense, that recurring expense, down. And if you can save $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year. It's not a lot, but it's $1,200 that you didn't have and that you were just otherwise going to be happy giving to this company without getting more car, So the trade-off there is obviously the length of the loan and things like that. But, that's why we got to look at this as a sum of all parts. Okay? Let's see here. What are some other What are some other ways that we can reduce recurring expenses? Oh yeah, just ask. That's my favorite one. I would literally call up a company and just say, hey, I feel like my bill's a little high. Is there anything you can do for me? And then sometimes they'll default to a loyalty program or retention promo. Other times they'll just say, oh, you know what? You've been with us. Sure. You know what? We'll just lower the payment. You know, it all just depends on how the conversation goes. But you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And if you don't just pick up the phone and ask, you don't know it's possible. You know? Okay. Then there are programs, right? I don't know. I keep drawing my P's as R's. There are programs. Think of this like Groupon, right? Programs, you know, memberships that you can get discounts on. I'm not drawing these words as words today. Oh well, you guys hopefully can see that says memberships or something. Looks like I'm having a stroke. So programs, memberships, these are third party in most cases, and they're more like rebate cashback programs. The other one here is going to be coupons, right? Because remember, recurring expenses are variable, meaning there's a lot of them, and food is a good example of one. So think of programs and memberships like having a DoorDash plan, where you save on fees by having a yearly payment that is lower than the combined total of maybe, you know, your frequency of ordering, for example, or Instacart if you get your groceries through there. Coupons are great for one-off things. If you want to go buy milk, you can go buy milk and use a coupon, save 30 cents, whatever. Last time I talked about this, I talked about the value in just buying milk somewhere else, for example, and that is just shopping around. You know, and we walked through an example using real data in my area. And, you know, if I buy my milk at this store versus that store, I can save $400 or $500 a year. It's not a lot, but if I were to just throw an extra $400 or $500 into a portfolio, what could I do with that over the course of the next 5 years? You know, so, and that doesn't involve me eating ramen. It doesn't involve me losing my phone, or having my car repossessed. It's just money that I would have normally spent somewhere else, that just can be freed up. So I kind of owe it to myself to do that without being a Scrooge. Like, I don't want to have to drive all the way across town just for milk. That's silly. You know, there is a convenience factor there, but that's the idea. Prepaid phone service is the same actual phone service as service on a plan, but it's far less expensive. Bought my phone outright and do that no contract monthly prepaid for $43 auto change to my card. Fergie, I love that. Guess how much I pay for my phone? Everyone put your guesses in the chat. If you did that with whatever butter and pasta is. Yeah, exactly. 3 things for $400 or $500 a year. Absolutely. $5, $33. You guys are close. Benny hit it right on the head. 25 plus tax. I pay $25 a month for my phone. Everyone else out there is paying $140 to $200. And that's just, I don't need fancy stuff, you know? I'm not going to, like, I pay for my phone, obviously, outright, but I just don't need, like, what else are you guys getting for your phone? I'm not going out in the Mojave, so I don't need insane coverage. It's on the AT&T network anyway. It's 2026. Phones are pretty much all the same. I don't need insurance because my phone is cheap and it's a Samsung, you know, it's all the same. Like, what specific advantage is there to being on a plan as opposed to just paying $25 a month and getting the same stuff? You know, like, just little things like that, that we're just conditioned to feel like we need. You know, people want insurance for their phones. They want to, you know, ease the burden of having to pay for their phones. So it makes sense. You know, if you're financially tight, it might make more sense to go on a plan and break up those payments, just like you would for layaway, or paying for furniture if you can't afford it. All at once anyway, you know, but ultimately you're paying more in the long run. And if you have the ability to not do that, you're not really losing anything. Your Nokia is not the same. You know, so, and again, that's a perfect example of people that have money, have opportunities. And if you don't have the money, but you need things, you're kind of forced to follow fewer and more limited and more costly options, under the guise of saving. And it becomes a destructive cycle if you don't recognize it. Like credit cards, for example. If you abuse credit cards, you will absolutely run into financial trouble. Phone companies make money on the finance. Yeah, it's device lending, basically. They finance these phones out. They collect interest on the payments over 2 or 3 years. Oh, you got to re-up. You got to buy a new phone. We'll give you a 10% discount on your new phone. Do it again, and they charge you 20% interest. Like, it's such a ripoff. You're not getting more phone for paying more monthly. I hate to say it. If you want to get a data plan, it's like $10 on top of my 25, and I'm just around Wi-Fi all the time, so I don't personally need it. But it's going to vary from person to person. If I can pay a tenth of what you're paying, I'm going to do that, because 90% of that extra money goes elsewhere. A payment plan is a loan at the end of the day. So yeah, they literally force you into a loan. It's the same as your house. It's the same as your car. You are just paying for a phone instead. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of amortization, because that phone payment isn't going on your record. It's not going on your credit score. It's like a Rent-A-Center with furniture. They only ding you on it if you don't pay. So it only works against you if you default and it goes to collections or something. And then you lose your phone anyway. So I just said little things like that. It's not going to be the right solution for everybody. There is no perfect solution. But that's why it's important to sit down and have these discussions with yourself and with a spreadsheet maybe, and just figure out, like, well, does it make sense to pay this, or can I pay this and still get the same quality of life? It's just most people pay stuff and they don't think about it. It's these stealth expenses that add up. You sign up for little things and you forget to cancel them. It's little stuff. It just adds up big. And then if you don't really think about it, because it's on like a monthly basis, take that number and multiply it by 12 and then multiply it by 10. That's what you're going to pay over the next 10 years because of that either lack of awareness or just the inconvenience of just having to go through some effort and change it. So if you could take that same amount and put it in, a portfolio or an HSA or a high yield savings account today, what would that be worth 10 years from now? So that's kind of, with the recurring expenses, I don't want to go too far down the hole as far as strategies about how to reduce things. Does everyone see the value, at least in reducing things that we don't have to pay more for on a consistent and perpetual basis? It's like going out in your lawn and finding $10 every month for no reason. Or sometimes it's 100 or 200 or 300, depending on how you do it. Stickman says, I still have an iPhone 11. I was the SE, but based on the 11, phones can technically last for years if you don't want the next new. And that's a factor too. I don't personally need a new phone. My phone is slow. Charlie, that's great that you mentioned that, because that was going to be my next point. It's sustenance. It's offsetting sustenance. So again, food is a recurring expense. So if you can offset the cost of things without disrupting your quality of life and maybe improving your quality of life through something like gardening, it makes sense to do that. And it doesn't have to be a super intensive thing. It could be something simple like just growing a couple of peppers in your house, or a couple of tomato plants, or something small, just to offset at least 1 or 2 little snack sessions or something like that. And yeah, I mean, you get outside if you're an outside garden. You get to learn stuff. You get to grow stuff. There's a sense of accomplishment that comes with that. There's a sense of physical health and well-being that comes from just being outside. You get a little bit of flexibility and mobility in there if you're just sedentary, because you're standing up and bending down at least. And it's just overall better, in my opinion, for most people to participate in. Even if it doesn't offset your full grocery bill, it's never going to unless you're a farmer. But at least it helps ward off the occasional craving, which could lead to maybe a $20 expense here and there. Or maybe you grow potatoes, or something a little bit more, filling that you can then use for meals. And then maybe that saves you on a Grubhub where you might spend $50 or $70, It's, you can do local trade as well. And, if you need something and they have it and you have something they need, you can trade, So eggs, people who can raise chickens and all that, that's a great source of offset as well. Chickens themselves have a lot of resources, but obviously the recurring eggs are a nice bonus. But if all you have is dirt and a window, you can grow something. And then again, it's not going to be a lot. It doesn't have to be a super intensive process. You're going to have to worry about pests and things like that. Maybe you have to build like fencing and things if you do it outside, or you could just go to, I'd say like maybe Target, get like one of those little greenhouses. It's just a big plastic sheet that's over a snap together metal frame. You can use that. Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Getting started and kind of knowing what to do is always the challenge, but you guys have a community here, and you have people like Charlie that do this a lot that can help you get started with just little stuff. Grow some strawberries. And you can do that in your house. Grow tomatoes. You can do that in your house. You could be a total indoor kitty and still grow something, and that can offset your food expense even by a small amount. It's worth it, in my opinion. Other things that you can make changes to might be your diet and the cadence of your diet, like little changes like eating protein early in the day. If you start off the day with something like an omelet, your cravings will be reduced over the course of the day, which means your brain is less hungry for carbohydrates, which means less, bored snacking. And just little stuff like that adds up, because if you really break down your budget and figure out, okay, I actually spend a lot for snacking, and it's predominantly carbohydrates because I just like crunchy, salty things, or I like sugary, chocolatey things, or someone else in the house likes gummy bears a lot, or somebody likes chocolate milk, or whatever it is. You can just find out where these inefficiencies are, and you don't have to change them. You don't have to stop doing things that you enjoy. But if there's something else that you also enjoy, like eating omelets, why not just eat more omelets? You like them anyway. But the impact that has over the course of a year, both physiologically and financially, can add up significantly, and we just don't realize that that's something that we can do. So again, I don't want people deliberately sabotaging their health and their meals just to put money into the stock market, but I do want you to seek better alternatives for maybe some of the things that you do have, if it's going to help you holistically. Take away all. No, I want you to have more joy. I love omelets. I would eat more omelets. But if you're not an egg person, or maybe you don't like cheese, then maybe you eat a different form. Maybe like chicken. Maybe you just cut up little fillets and season them the way you want. You can meal prep, or just little stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying you have to be like a psycho, every cent is accounted for. We're going to pull apart the toilet paper, 2-ply into 1-ply. Like, don't do that. That's too far, in my opinion. Absolutely flush your toilet, guys, to an extent. Don't just sit there like Snowflake does and just keep going. The man's got demons. But when we can make change, and it's a better change, and it's a change we can enjoy, then why not? What's getting in the way other than just discomfort or because it's different, Yeah, Fergie, absolutely. So much money gets wasted in drive-thrus and ordering out. When you order food, for example, ordering drinks on top of that, I kind of walk through that. It's a stealth expense. You don't have to buy drinks every time you go out to eat if you're bringing the food home. Like, just little changes like that. It might knock 10 or 20% off what you spend every single time you do it. And if you do it a lot, that adds up. If you don't do it a lot, it still adds up. Just little gradual changes like that. And you can, that kind of veers into quality of life things, because, maybe people like having that. Maybe they like the experience of the bubbles and the cup and the straw. And I get that. That's a thing too. So it's for you to decide. But if that's something that you're comfortable sacrificing, it adds up. Like, just look at the numbers. So that's an easy way to reduce that recurring expense. You can get a lot of stuff, like kidney beans, for example. It's another area where, you can just make certain changes. Canned kidney beans are technically less healthy than dry kidney beans. And dry kidney beans are less convenient because you have to prepare them before you can cook with them. So you get a consideration for sodium, and then you've got a consideration for prep time and the energy it costs. So just little stuff like that. You don't have to go super granular like that, but if it makes sense to buy your potatoes somewhere else and get your milk somewhere else and cut back on this and get more of this because it's better and you just enjoy it more, like maybe like orange juice more than soda, get more orange juice. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you add it up over hundreds of times, those changes definitely matter financially and, again, physiologically, which is more important. So if you have healthy alternatives and you enjoy them more, there's really no reason not to just make the change, and then it should reflect a financial benefit as well. I guess that's what I'm trying to aim at here. Pack the refrigerator in the van. Don't buy all the quick check snacks. Yeah. Snacks are definitely the bane of any healthy budget, I guess. But we're also human. Yeah, ditching soda too. I mean, that's a big one, I think, for many people. And there's good alternatives out there. Like, most people are for whatever reason convinced not to drink juice because they think that soda is it's the preferred out of the two. But fruit juice just has a lot of stuff that soda doesn't have, you know? And it's just, again, I'm not going to go on like a health discussion here, but if you like juice and you also like soda, just drink a little bit more juice gradually and then drink gradually less soda, right? Doesn't have to be a big drastic upheaval to your life. And you just get more bang for your buck. You know, it's not a do this all right now kind of thing, because that's just going to get disrupted. And it's very difficult, as you guys all know, it's very difficult to just make drastic changes in life because our brains seek familiarity. You know, and it is a physical dependency as well. High sugar consumption is a very real addiction. You know, it's a very difficult thing to overcome. And if you just try to willpower your way through it and then blame yourself when it doesn't work, you're going to have a very stressful time, and you're not going to make any progress, because more stress leads to more stress relief, which means more soda. So you have to treat yourself like a human and be nice to yourself, but also hold yourself accountable. So again, I don't want to go too far into the health area of it. I want to mostly focus on the recurring expenses portion. Does anyone have any questions about reducing recurring expenses so far? You know, and again, we can do the same thing. We always look to improve our inflow, right? Everyone here was taught over the course of their life how to make money outside the market. You're now all trying to make money in the market, which is, you know, just learning a new skill. And that primarily focuses on learning how to not lose money. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. But everyone here is taught to make money. Very few people are taught how to live with money. So what we need to do is understand that most people focus on improving inflow, right? And we do that by getting better jobs. We do that by taking on second jobs. We do that by asking for raises. We do that by taking in new skills and turning that into more compensation. We learn to, negotiate, the higher value outcomes for ourselves. We put money into bank accounts that have better interest rates. We refinance things so that we can have more money month to month, and then we just kind of hit the wall, right? And then our lifestyle expenses catch up to our new income, and then if there's a disruption of the income, we've got to adjust downwards, and it's very traumatic for a lot of people. So it makes sense while we have that window where we're not in chaos mode to focus on reducing the recurring, and it's always just worth picking up a phone and talking to a person. I kind of harped on this a while back. You don't know how the conversation is going to go until you have it. And if you are curious about loyalty programs, retention programs, memberships or coupons or anything like that, or just basically shopping around and saying, well, what can you offer me because you want my business and you don't want me to go give it to a competitor because they're going to get my data, and that's what you guys really want. So how much are you going to charge me to come to you guys, and how much am I willing to pay, and do those align? Is there an overlap in agreement, or do we have a stalemate? And if there's a stalemate, you just keep shopping around. If there's an overlap in agreement, you hit the button and you become part of their volume, right? And then, that it doesn't have to be difficult, right? Budgeting is very, very simple. At the end of the day, it's a very simple thing. You make this much, you spend this much, and widening the gap between them as much as possible without causing chaos or impairments to quality of life. That is the goal, because then that's surplus, that's free cash. So everyone here hopefully remembers free cash flow. when I talked about that. And that is just a company's take-home money. So if you have, let's say you've got a hot dog truck, right? You're gonna have to pay for buns. You got to pay for the hot dogs. You got to pay for the health license. You got to pay for the tax permits and all that good stuff. Ketchup and sodas and things like that, right? You got to pay for gas and all that. So you got your expenses. That is no different than a household. You've got the same inflow and outflow structure in that you make money and you have to pay some. You've got taxes, you've got depreciation, amortization, and debt, right? And that can come in many forms. So when you open a hot dog truck, you got to buy stuff. You've got to pay for your inventory. You got your inventory. You've got your permits. You got to pay taxes, obviously. Tax. Then you've got your utilities, right? Because you got to pay for cooking the hot dogs. I'll just do utils. And then you've got to advertise, right? You got to advertise. And then you've got to pay for gas so you can travel. Okay. And then, you just got miscellaneous expenses that you have to pay for. You're going to have like shrinkage, which is things that just go bad or stuff gets stolen or something like that. And then, of course, with that comes insurance, right? Shrinkage. For Snowflake, this is a little bit different. But for a business, it's things that are wasted. And insurance, right? We got to write insurance. Okay, so these are the amounts that someone has to pay in order, and these are all going to be proportional, right? They're all going to be a ratio, and it's going to stay the same pretty much for most months. That's the outflow, or OF. Again, for Snowflake, that's going to be different. For a food truck, that's outflow. Amen, brother. Then you got your inflow. And guess what this is? Selling hot dogs. Right? And that's pretty much your only form of revenue. Unless you're partnering up, you could do partnerships. But who's going to partner with a hot dog franchise? And where's that going to go? Now, there's potential. There's an N in that word. We got partners, sponsors. Let's say you want to sell at a Little League tournament, right? You might have some local companies that might want to put a banner on your hot dog truck. Those are kind of one-off. They're not really recurring. But that's, you consider those like windfalls. But this is pretty much going to be your recurring revenue, and that's going to have kind of a baseline. It's going to ebb and flow a little bit. It's going to be above and below. But if this number alone doesn't cover all of this, you have a negative free cash flow. And free cash flow, again, is just after you sell as many hot dogs as you can, many sodas and whatever, and then you have to pay all these taxes, buy new inventory, pay for the utilities, gas in the truck, advertisements, shrinkage, and your insurance policies and things like that. The free cash flow is what you take home at the end of the day. That's the money in your pocket that you get to spend on things like buying a new truck or taking out more advertisements or moving to a different vendor or something like that. Or incorporating a new product like margaritas or something like that, tacos, whatever you want to do. Thank you. In case it, appreciate you, Stickman. So does this make sense so far? Because what happens here is when people see this all listed out, they get pretty nervous in most cases. And then if we swap this over to a household and make the same correlation, we call this salary. Right? We still have in a household, and to run a household, you still have inventory. Consider this your groceries. You still have permits and tax. Let's say you pay a mortgage or rent. You're paying to reserve a spot to operate. And then you have to pay taxes. You pay for utilities. You pay for, I guess maybe not advertisements, but let's consider this, just you getting to work, right? You got to pay for that gas. So we'll cancel that one out. Shrinkage, things get lost. You have repairs that you just have to make. Let's say your air conditioner busts or something like that. And then you have insurance, So a lot of these are very similar to a household. Let's say maybe like a car payment or something, however we want to do that. And the problem here is that we don't have partnerships or sponsors because we can't advertise to companies and have those companies help us support our household. So what we have to do instead is look for those partnerships in the form of discounts to reduce the amount that we have to pay. And that's kind of why I wanted to explain it this way, because this is reduction in recurring, or REDREC, if you will. This is the only other way that we can make the salary count for more, unless we have multiple forms of income. And even if we do, this matters. It's worth doing because that'll keep us from being nervous, because more of this money going towards all these things is not good for us if we want to make more money and keep it, right? We need a positive free cash flow. So we have to strive to not just seek balance, but make it lopsided in our favor. We have to make more and keep more, not just make more, right? So it all boils down to this free cash flow. This is our bread and butter. And for that, just to really drive that point home, I'm drawing an empty box and I'm going to leave it empty so that you're leaving this conversation thinking about it. So you've been bamboozled. I hope you have fun with that. So with that said, I do have to cut this stream off. Does this make sense? Did this land? Did it hit home? I know some of you guys are pretty comfortable financially, and if you are, this especially applies to you because you have better opportunities than people who are scraping by. So everything that is not a direct cash dollar going into your bank account must come in the form of a reduction of expense if you want to grow and widen that gap. Does that make sense? All right, sorry about that. I had to die off camera apparently. All right, so I hope this makes sense. I hope the point landed. This is ultimately what wealth boils down to. It doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter how much you spend. It's all about the balance between them and how wide you can make that gap without sacrificing your quality of life. Do not sell your dog just to put money in the stock market. Okay? Maybe shoot your goldfish. They can get a little pricey, but don't get rid of your dog. Dogs are quality of life. So with all that said, yeah, don't sell the chicken, sell the eggs. Exactly. Shoot the goldfish. Well, it's been a bit of a troublemaker for what it's worth. Unless you have the rooster. Yeah, there you go. Then we rent the chickens. All right. So with that said, I have to go as well. It's after 1 o'clock and I don't want to cut into bull stream. So does anyone have any questions here before I jump off of here? I do got to jump off of here. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this pending order here on HCWB. We just didn't come back up. MRNO is doing its thing. AUD, it's doing its thing. Sorry. SLE and TDIC are just kind of doing their thing. AUD did pop out of the box and it did hit that 2% target. I was not trading it. I didn't pay attention to it because I was in the stream, but that's the goals. We just, from before, right? We've got these thresholds. We get in when the zone breaks by a small amount, and then if it reverses, we stop out. Otherwise, we seek to lock most of our shares at a nice achievable base hit profit, and then we stop out on the rest if it wants to pull back, or if it keeps going like MRNO, like it did way down here, then we get all this extra profit potential, and then we can just re-enter in the future if we want, or we just respect the stop losses and get out when it's time to get out. So will I share what positions I'm holding in Ragstridge? Yeah, so I have main. I'll share this real quick. So for this first, for the first contribution, the first month, I'm choosing 7, and I'm just putting $100 equally into all 7. Now, in the case of O, because it's a $62 stock, I can't buy $100 worth, and I don't want to do fractional shares. So I'm just buying one share at $62.35. So next contribution, I will have a total of $350 to put into each of these anew, which means I'll be able to get one more share because 37.65 is left over from the original $100 that I plan to contribute to this O position. So I'll take that 30 and the 50 that I'm going to allocate from the 350 and put it into this and buy another share. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. I also have Schwab, SCHD. I love this one. I've always loved it. As you can see, we've definitely had a field day with it in the past. Tesla and IMWY, these are just yield max. They're high yield, high risk ETFs. I plan to sell these shares for a loss, but I want to collect the dividend income short term so that I can reinvest that dividend income into more stable positions. And then I want to use these for tax loss. That's why I have them. That's the only reason I have them. If I was net negative for the year, I wouldn't touch these because I don't need to, because I can just take those losses and use them from elsewhere. I also have ET, Energy Transfer. This is a great one. We've traded this a lot as well in the past. It's been good to us, so I'm going to keep doing that. Obviously, these are all moving up pretty aggressively, and that's okay. I don't really care too much about what the shares do as far as price. I only care about the dividend, which is a percentage of the share price, but it's over a longer period of time. And then Pfizer is kind of the big bucket that I'm dumping everything into right now. Yeah, ET is a K1. Thanks for pointing that out. And those are just handled a little bit differently on taxes. And we'll get into all that in a future stream. So I grabbed some Pfizer here. I deliberated between that and Johnson & Johnson. And I decided to go with Pfizer because of the cost, because it's a smaller portfolio. Eventually, yes, I will migrate into a Johnson & Johnson position, and then I may or may not reduce Pfizer, or I might just contribute to both. I just like both of them. I just don't want to be heavily allocated into the healthcare sector as much. So these are just kind of storage buckets. Over time, I will be replacing some of these with other larger positions anyway, because we're going to transition out of income into growth. But for right now, this is the structure that I'm setting up so that I can kind of hit the ground running. Does that all make sense? And because these are all in the same portfolio, it will be reflected in the total account value as these move up and down unrealized. So we just have to be careful about realized P&L from the day trading separately from the unrealized P&L and the dividend income, which is realized from these 7 dividend positions. So I'm going to set up a spreadsheet, give it all to you guys, and then you guys can all fill it in on your own, and then you can track this all the way that you got it. Did you go over how you selected these? I think I saw it on a stream. Right now, I just talked about the ratio and kind of what slots I want to fill. Next time, I'm going to go through what specifically I look for when I pick dividend tickers. But right now, I went over the fact that I want a small allocation in yield max or high yield stuff, so I can sell the shares for a loss and reinvest the profit, the dividends. Then I want a larger section of income ETFs, and those are going to be kind of my monthly pairs, like Main, Schwab. And then I want the longer term, bigger bucket for growth, and that's going to be Pfizer and or Johnson & Johnson and maybe a handful of others over time. But no, we didn't look at the balance sheets or any of that just yet. We'll get into all that. Today, I wanted to talk about making sure that everything else is squared away before we even look at stocks, because I don't want people to jump into a bunch of positions without being able to continue those contributions. So step 1 is figuring out your budgets and making sure that you have reduced as many recurring expenses as possible and are living comfortably before putting money into the stock market, and then finding out what your number is for what is acceptable for you to contribute on a consistent basis, because you don't want that to be disrupted. But if you're new and you just buy a bunch of stocks, then you're going to be holding. You might have to take money out because of stuff outside the market, and that's just not a fun position to be in, especially if we're trying to track stuff and demonstrate proof of concept. Stickman, I'm putting it all in one account for now, just to kind of show how these would work side by side. Yep. And then, in the future, I'll probably just branch them out again, but that's the idea. Just keeping them side by side for now. And at some point, I'll probably want to do that anyway, because I want to walk through the hedging and stuff as well. So I'll probably migrate these over to a margin account at that point because I want to do spreads and stuff on them. I can't really do that on a cash account. Not the way I want to. So with this said, I'm going to end the recording. I am recording these this cycle as well. Oops, sorry, I almost just smacked myself in the face. I am recording these, and I'm going to be working with you guys in the chat a little bit more one-on-one. I did assign your roles, so anyone who has the Rags to Riches team member role, you guys are in the current cycle. You guys are first and foremost here. Everyone else who was a Rags to Riches member still is, but you guys have the same role. It's just renamed as a legacy role, so that you guys can still participate in those chats and help everybody. But the 10 students that I chose for this cycle are going to be sharing their stuff, so they're going to be a little bit more prominent. All right, so let me end the recording. I appreciate y'all hanging out, and I'll see you guys on Bull Stream at 1:30 Eastern. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do before then, if you were with the Traders Paradise. Speaking of which, if you guys are not going to Traders Paradise this year, if you haven't at least had a conversation with Nikki, I encourage you to do so, just to know what's going on, and then seeing if there's any way we can work with you on that. We're trying to be as accommodating as possible because we honestly just want people in the room. There's just so much more value in the room where we can just show stuff over the shoulder and point to stuff. It's a little bit different on a screen. And just having that real-time interaction, and then the social side as well. I mean, that's probably more important in my opinion, because it's being in a room and seeing other people who are sharing a goal obviously is a lot more important, and that can help you build your confidence more than anything. Last time I showed you something over your shoulder, you cried. Well, I mean, you were down there. All right, yeah, let me end the recording. I appreciate it. Definitely open up that support ticket. I'll put the link right here in the chat if you guys can't find that channel, because there's a lot of channels in here. I get it. Make sure you guys click that link. At least have a combo with Nikki. See how she's doing. Say hi. I will see you guys next time. Thank you all very much. And I'll upload the recording and share it in the channel so you guys can watch this all over and over again and re-traumatize yourselves. Bye.